Good afternoon, everybody. Let's say a prayer together, shall we? O heavenly King, Comforter, Spirit of truth, who art everywhere present and fillest all things, treasury of good things and giver of life, come and dwell in us and cleanse us of all impurity and save our souls a good one. And again, good afternoon. There's a few people here, um, not a ton. I'll wait for, there's a few less people. All right. Yeah, hello, everybody. Hi, Tommy. Thanks for subscribing. And yes, we will talk about that. Hello, Jules. Nice to meet you. And Louise. Nice to see you again. Welcome. Um, I'm still not entirely sure what I'm doing with this whole uh, Father Chris Johnson YouTube channel, but hopefully it'll be. Thank you for clarifying that. Watch or drop rather. Let's talk about Final Fantasy VII for a second, since there's not many people here. I love that game, of course. It's one of my favorite games growing up. Um, and it's the reason I switched to PlayStation from Nintendo, as I'm sure it was for a lot of people back in the 90s. Great game. Not my favorite Final Fantasy game. I think Final Fantasy VI would have to be my favorite. Six had one of the best, probably still the best translation of any of the Final Fantasy games, and Seven had a notoriously bad translation. So much so that some of the plot elements were very, very difficult to discern because it's like really hard to know what's going on. Come on, Eris all the way, baby. I felt sorry for Tifa. I did. I felt kind of bad for her, but I mean, these days I don't have much of an opinion on it one way or the other anymore. Um, yeah, we've got a few suggestions for topics. Um, I think the power of faith kind of uh, covers a lot of them. Um, sorry, drop. Hey, can't please everybody, I guess. I remember still back in the day when, oh, did he leave? Yeah, maybe he actually left. I hope he didn't actually leave. But if you did, hey, can't please all of the people all the time. I remember still when people were claiming that there was a way you could stop Eris from dying. Spoiler alerts. Um, maybe there is in the remake. Um, so, okay, well, let's begin talking about real stuff, shall we? Not that Final Fantasy VII isn't real or anything. One day I'll get a PlayStation again, a new one, and I'll actually play that game. I've heard they split it up into 3 games. That sounds kind of cool. Um, so, the power of faith. Oh my gosh, my favorite character in 6. This is like those times in high school when you knew your teacher's. Not that I'm anyone's teacher, okay, but you knew your teacher's favorite subject, and you could derail the entire class by bringing up motorcycles or baseball cards or something like that. He'd spend the rest of the time talking about it. Um, Favorite character in 6? Well, I would have to say um, Celes was my favorite character. I used to always watch. I love that game for many, many reasons. And one of the reasons is you could have 2 controllers plugged in, and you could split the party between 2 players during the battles. And oh man, I loved that feature. And I really also I love the storyline of Celes, and I love her little. I used to always play Celes, and oh gosh, I'm gonna lose all street cred by saying I can't remember off the top of my head the name of the gambler character. Setzer, Celes and Setzer, and I used to love to play them together in a party. And Locke, of course, is part of that sort of weird love triangle thing going on. Oh, there's so many great storylines in that game. Goodness gracious, just thinking about it. I've bought every version of that game that there has been to buy. I love it so. So the power of faith. Specifically, someone asked to talk about, it was Mark, the power of faith and belief independent of the object of said faith and belief. It's an interesting way to put it. Independent of that faith and belief. Independent of the object. I'm not entirely sure what that means, but I decided to go ahead with it because I think I know. And I'm thinking of an example from the Chronicles of Narnia, The Horse and His Boy, and we talk about the fact that this boy was raised in the culture that worships Tash as their god, and okay, beliefs got okay. Here we go. Yes. Well, I certainly believe in the power of faith in that regard. I've seen it happen more than one time in my life, where doctors are scratching their heads, but they have to say, I don't know why the cancer's gone, but it's gone. Yes. And many doctors believe in it too, believe in the power of faith, even if they don't have any belief in the object. Yeah. Only because they're honest enough as scientists to acknowledge the facts that they've had to face. But as far as I thought it was more along the lines of the boy in The Horse and His Boy, and the fact that he's raised in a society that knows nothing of Aslan or thinks he's the enemy. But of course, anyone seeking the truth. Now, I need to preface this also, which I'll probably do in a lot of my videos going forward. I know that my audience is mostly, at this point, folks from Quod Verum, and maybe a couple of other folks that I know on Telegram, who may be popping in now and again as well. So I know that most of you are not Orthodox Christians, but for a couple of you may be Christians, or you may be believers in some sense or other, or maybe you're like Saul, you're deists, and don't believe that God has an active role to play in worldly events. And so for many of you, I'm going to be not only telling, unlike on the Quad Meet, where we talk a little bit about religion, but I'm mainly talking about historical facts to do with orthodoxy, but not about the faith itself. Here I'll be talking about the faith, and I'll be talking about it as an Orthodox Christian priest. And so I hope I don't offend anybody by doing that, but nonetheless, I am going to talk about the faith as received by me from the Orthodox Church. And so it'll be the Orthodox position that I discuss, and I'll try to explain that position as best I can. And anybody should feel free to ask any questions you may have about any of these topics. So that's a long preamble. The Orthodox position here on the Christian position is that the truth is a person, and that person is Jesus Christ. So that when he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, let me just mute the Quod Verum tab for a second so that I can not distract folks with the Christ is a person, the truth is a person whose name is Jesus Christ. And so that if anyone is pursuing the truth, no matter what their background, no matter whether they're the mythical, everyone likes to ask, well, what about the guy who's up on a mountain in Tibet or somewhere and never heard of Jesus Christ or something like that? As a sort of it's a classic gotcha question, that people like to ask, uh, especially priests, as regards salvation. And by the way, I apologize for background noise. Kids are playing, and TV is on, and it is what it is. If one is pursuing the truth, then that person is pursuing Jesus Christ. That is my position and the Orthodox Christian position. So that when you have faith, and if you have faith in nothing but the truth, then you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And that's not the church being condescending or anything. This is, every one of us is in that position. Every single one of us, even those of us who have received or have the true faith, which is what the Orthodox Christian Church is, the fullness of the truth. Even those of us who were born in the church, everyone is in relatively the same position if they're a human being, which is that if you're pursuing the truth, there's always more to learn, and you never have it all. You can approach it step by step, and you'll always be doing that, even into eternity, even in the afterlife, even in heaven. There will never be a point where we will have arrived and have no further progress to make. Okay, heaven is not a bunch of clouds with where we all earn our wings and get to sit around playing harps. No, it will be a place full of dynamic action, and the resurrection even more so. Because of course heaven is an intermediary step between this life and the life of the age to come, which is of course the last line of the Nicene Constantinopolitan Creed. We die in this life. Our soul is separated from our body, and our body decomposes, and then there will be a general resurrection, after which we will be reunited with our body, and everything will be transfigured in the light of the resurrection. And we don't quite know what that means. There are some hints in the scripture, in the Gospels. There are some hints as to what that might look like, but not a lot of detailed information as yet. But the point being, we will not run out of things to do. It will not be a life of sitting around and just playing beautiful music, although that would be pretty cool. But it might get boring after a while. There won't be any boredom. There won't be any boredom. So, um, uh, yes, okay. So much to do with outcome. Yes, indeed. And this is one of those facts. I like to call them pointers or road signs, markers. It's not proof of God's existence. It's not proof of God's existence, but it is a marker that points to it. Because God doesn't compel people to believe in him. He made us free. He made us free. But he points, he shows up throughout the creation in so many ways. And that's one of them. That's one of them. Being is a verb, by the way. How are you being today? Being is a verb. Absolutely. Yeah. Because, and this is sort of related to the uh, reason why Christians tend to be rabidly anti-abortion. All of us are in a state of potentiality. Okay. Sorry about that. Um, all of us are in a state of potentiality, just like we were discussing a second ago. Um, from the whether we are a zygote or a 90-year-old man on his deathbed, we all have so much more growing to do. And to deprive someone of that potential against their will is one of the worst sins one can commit. So, Thomas, I'm not quite sure what is meant by this. I'm not quite sure. That sounds like it might have a specific theological meaning to you, or it might be a term, a specific term. Let me know. So, yes, of course, belief has a huge impact on outcomes, and this is why you get these. I mean, our will really is what's saying is our will is spectacularly powerful, frighteningly powerful. Hi, James. I'm doing pretty good today. Doing pretty good. Our will is frighteningly powerful, and as such, uh, it has an impact on the outcome of our life. Look at this organic chip bag in the background here. How long has that been there? Let me fold that up and throw it away. Introduce you all to the messiness of my life. uh, um, I like to say to all of my friends on either side of the aisle, uh, whatever aisle you might be talking about, the only thing scarier than someone else's freedom is your own freedom. In a Christian context, that has even more meaning. To quote Henry V, each man's duty is to the king, but every man's soul's his own. You can't blame someone else for the state of your soul. You really can't. Of course, if you know enough to know that you have a soul and that it can have a state that can affect your salvation one way or the other, that means you know enough to take responsibility. Hi, Lola. Always good to see you. So, we had another. We can talk a little bit more about faith. We, I went to see Jordan Peterson speak one time, a couple of years back. I love that man, by the way. That's a whole tangent, maybe, but I do love that man. I think he has saved lives. But anyway, he was working on an idea at that time, and I think, by the way, I think he's moving towards becoming a Christian. I think he's moving towards that, maybe step by step, quite slowly, but I believe he's moving in that direction. In any case, he was working on an idea at that time. One of the things that's great about seeing him live is that he shares where he's at intellectually with the audience. And so he's actively working out an idea on the stage as he's talking to people, and it's wonderful to behold. But in any case, he talked about how life organizes itself according to your aim. That humans are built to love shooting at things, hitting targets. Now, when we set our sights on something, the world tends to organize itself around us and our path in such a way as to hit that thing. And this is why they say, be careful what you wish for. because you will wittingly or unwittingly make little choices throughout your life that'll bring you the things that you want or that you think you want, and you got to be careful. You got to be careful. It manifests itself in all sorts of ways. Speaking of which, let me have a little. Speaking of which, have a little drink from my Malbec here. Does everybody like this Malbec? This is obviously Malbec, by the way. Is it not? Maybe it's Coke. Who can say? Is it a rum and Coke? It's a little early for that. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, right? Am I drunk? Am I not? Who can tell? I'm not. That's good content right there. So we make choices, and life does organize itself. The world will it doesn't organize itself. It's our choices, our will extending outwards and alerting us to things that will help us in the direction that we intend to move. And I say intend because you can intend things without realizing it, without being conscious of it. If you're not aware of your thoughts, if you're not moving volitionally through life, you can arrive in spots. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but be careful what you wish for. And that has to do with faith, by the way. That's really belief in a nutshell. Uh, Even if you don't realize it, okay, the goal is to achieve a state of of a holistic human being. And again, being is a verb, right? So we move forward with purpose when we achieve this state. We don't have accidental thoughts, or if we do, we brush them aside as unnecessary. Excuse me. Because they don't serve our goals. Imagine how powerful each one of us is. How powerful we could be. How much good could we do, or evil? This, by the way, is the reason death exists. That might be a topic for another time. But it does lead us into our other very, it's a very difficult topic. And it comes from DeWalt. I don't know if you're still able to, if you're still watching. He said he might not be in a position to, yes. Okay, so everybody check out DeWalt's thread on Quod Verum. He asked about suicide, people's pain, mental and physical, and why suicide is not always cowardly. And I said that. I said, oof, oof, not an easy one. I've had friends that have killed themselves. I've had friends that have died before their time for a couple of different reasons. And this is where it gets to be very difficult because I said already, again, be careful what you wish for. And these people made their own reality, and they made hell for themselves. They made hell for themselves. That's within our power too, by the way. That's how powerful we are. That's how powerful our will is, our freedom. Uh, we one of the reasons, one of the many reasons that I'm part of the Orthodox Church, that I remain a part of it, is because We make heaven. We participate in the making of heaven. We're parts of the kingdom. That's why, by the way, in the Our Father, what is the Our Father? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts or trespasses, as we forgive our debtors or those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one, or from evil, depending on, your denomination, etc., your translation. Well, what a set of, first of all, it's a prayer that Christ himself gave us to pray. So that's powerful in itself. But he says, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And he's speaking about the state of affairs. It's not actually even asking for anything to happen. It's something that has happened. He's commanding it to happen. It has happened because of his incarnation. He's on earth. His body is on earth. It's called the church. We're members of it. It is the kingdom. It's the beginning of the process of total victory. The victory is Christ's, but he's shared in it. He's shared it with us. And the victory simply is the growth and prosperity of that kingdom everywhere it is. And it's heaven. It's the beginning of the resurrected life. Just a taste, just a foretaste. Huh. So much more to come. But the opposite is also true. We can make hell for ourselves. There are some, and people often accuse Catholics of this, and I don't know enough about Catholic theology, really. I mean, I know enough to engage in a polemical debate with a Catholic about it, but I don't know enough about it to actually give it the respect that a full addressing of the subject would deserve. People accuse Catholics and others of saying that suicide is always a mortal sin, that you're automatically going to hell if you commit suicide. Now, the Orthodox in general believe the same thing, but an important difference is we don't assume we I and many most priests that I've talked to, all priests that I've talked to, that I've known in my life, we would not assume that decision was made in when the person was in their right mind. And if there was mental illness involved, or the person was not aware of, really fully spiritually aware, our tendency is to have mercy. We assume that they have fallen victim to an illness, and not that they chose specifically and with both eyes, spiritual eyes, wide open to kill themselves. Yeah, there is such a thing as mental illness, absolutely. And I didn't say hi, DJ. I didn't say hi earlier. I'm sorry about that. And James, hello. And yes, um, yes, there is such a thing as mental illness. It's a serious business. And I don't believe that mental illness is the same thing as demonic possession, or that demonic possession was just something that the people in olden times came up with because they couldn't explain mental illness. I don't think that at all. I've seen demonic possession. It's not the same. Although mental illness can be used as an inroad sometimes, but it's not the same thing. And yeah, mental illness is real, and many people suffer from it. Many people suffer from it. And I had a friend, as I said, I've lost people when I was young, when I was 21, 22, um, that was the worst, one of the worst years of my life. It was the year I got out of the army, and my first love died. Uh, then, well, actually, let's see, in order of that year, my dog, long time dog, dog from childhood, you know, my dog, my first love, my grandma, and then my best friend all died within the space of a year. In the case of the dog, she was old, and that was sort of just a foretaste, kind of to soften me up a little bit. I said foretaste before, but here I'm saying it again in a rather negative connotation. But um, uh, and let me backtrack for a second, because Thomas, yes, I do believe that that is something of what heaven is for, or at least it serves that purpose. Yes, and it's one of the reasons why in the Orthodox Church we say that someone has fallen asleep. In fact, we're just about to celebrate the Dormition of the Theotokos. That's the Mother of God, Mary. Um, and Dormition means falling asleep. Her the day of her death comes up here in August. It's considered one of the great feasts of the Church, as a matter of fact. Uh, in these deaths that I had in my life, I had a chance to see what different kinds of death look like and the kind of mark they leave behind. Uh, when a dog dies, it's everybody's used to that. I think at this point, maybe not used to it, but many people have experienced that when a pet passes away. It's never happy. Um, then my grandma, or no, then my first love died. That was, I think, the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And, you know, I learned a lot that year. I learned a lot. And I thought about a lot of things. And one of the hardest things to face was the fact, and I say fact, not carelessly, that if she had lived, my life would have been miserable, because we very well might have gotten married, and it would have been a terrible idea for reasons that, to a large degree, were really outside of her control. I mean, although, again, I don't want to discount anyone's freedom. People are always free, but sometimes people just, it's so hard to break certain habits of behavior. Um, I'm not glad she's dead. This is the paradox. This is what's so hard to face. I tear up thinking about her, especially when I think about the specifics of how we met. I mean, we only knew each other for, I guess, 6 years. I met her when I was in my mid-teens at an Orthodox camp, and she was dead less than 10 years later. I mean, 10 years is nothing, but it's everything when you're that age, right? It's an era, more than, it's a couple eras of a lifetime when you're in your teens and 20s. Um, but she came from a messed up household, and it was a long distance relationship, so that was kind of doomed in the first place at the time. But that's sort of beside the point. In any case, we had a I broke up with her, um, because she cheated on me. And that was one of the things that actually pushed me into joining the army, because I began to feel that I had not much left to look forward to in my regular life, which was crazy to think when you're 19. It's a stupid thing to think, but it's just kind of the way that my mind was going at that time. So I joined the army, not just because of that, but again, it was an element that pushed me. And through the course of my time in the army, she and I reconnected. You know, because of the fact that I was feeling pretty salty, and I also about her, and also because I was in the army, so I was like, more confident and more self-assured and all that kind of stuff. I didn't have a problem telling her exactly what I thought about everything that happened, and because of that honesty, it actually kind of started reforming our relationship in a way from the ground up. And in any case, I mean, she was a drug addict and various other things that you could use your imagination. Okay, it's not like anyone people don't know what's up. I already said she cheated on me, etc. But man, I loved her. Anyway, she, we fell in love again. All right, and then she was going to move to Maryland from New Jersey, and we were going to be together, and she was going to go to the University of Maryland, and all of this was going to happen, in less than 3 months. I was getting ready to get out. And then she went to the hospital and died 3 weeks later. Got a staph infection. They had to induce a coma. She never came out of the coma, and that was it. She was 19 when that happened. And we met each other when she was 13. So, and that happened, she died almost a month to the day before I was going to get out of the army. And I got out of the army. My best friend while I was in, a guy named Glenn, I mean, we had everything in common. We loved to listen to music together. We loved to. He would play the guitar. I would write. We'd write songs together, and he played the guitar, and I'd write lyrics and sing, and he he would. We'd play like little shows for our friends, just in the day room in the barracks in Korea. That's where I was stationed at the time. And I knew him from AIT. Anybody, I mean, I knew him from when there were still drill sergeants around. Which, again, it wasn't a long period of time, but when you're in the army, like every day is full of events. Usually, there's always something going on. So even though it was a short period of time, I mean, it was a whole era of my life. It's like how I mark my life is before the army and after the army. And I mean, from the moment we met, we were like best friends. Just and the only thing we didn't agree on was God and hope, and he had no hope. He had such a sense of humor. He had such sensitivity, um, but he had no hope. And he used to say to me, I mean, he would get drunk, like ripped drunk, and he would say, "I don't think I'm going to make it out of Korea alive." He would just say that. He'd get drunk and say that. He had a major drinking problem too. I mean, if that wasn't, I mean, it kind of comes to the territory maybe. And he was right. I said, "Be careful what you wish for." You know, we used to. He introduced me to some bad habits too. You know, careful of the company you keep. I'll never stop loving him, and I'll never stop loving her. But still, they were not good influences on my life, on the whole, except for the love that I had for them that I still keep. So God is able to make good from evil, but that doesn't really mean you should be okay with engaging in bad decisions. Um, in any case, he he introduced me to a thing called robo tripping, which maybe some of you are aware of. Um, it's where you chug a couple of bottles of Robitussin usually, but you can get the over-the-counter brand as well. And it has the active ingredient in cough syrup is a chemical called dextromethorphan, which is actually it's a psychedelic drug. People don't know that it's a dissociative anesthetic, but in small doses, dissociatives can make you. Charlotte, don't do that, please. I didn't bother to mute that time. Um, Dissociatives can make you not care about the fact that you have a cough, which is why it's used in cough syrup. Okay, in large doses, they make you not care that you're alive and not even aware that you're alive. So other drugs in the dissociative family would be things uh, like oh, PCP, for example. Angel dust is what it used to be called. Um, uh, DMT. Maybe that's not in the same thing. Anyway, the point is, it's a major hallucinogenic drug, very powerful. So if you chug 3 or 4 bottles of Robitussin, it's not a cheap high. Like some people are just like, oh, it's what kids do instead of getting drunk. It's not like being drunk. Um, it's serious business. Um, yeah, yeah. Watch drop is right. They actually they didn't implement that because of the dextromethorphan. They implemented that because of the other ingredients that were killing people. Because dextromethorphan won't kill you, but the other things that are in there, such as guaifenesin, which is the expectorant, too much of that can kill you. So each of the active ingredients, and you'll see with the Robitussin, you'll see all these different letters after it. Robitussin DM is your basic brand, and that's just the dextromethorphan, just the cough suppressant. But then you have other things like the antihistamine, for example, um, which can dry out. If you take it in those amounts, it'll dry out your sinuses, and you can start bleeding from your eyeballs and stuff like that. Anyway, so that's it's. But the dextromethorphan part. Yeah, they did start implementing ID checks. They started implementing things like you can't buy more than 2 bottles of it at a time, stuff like that. Um, anyway, so that was what me and Glenn would do on a weekend. I mean, I'm not proud of it. It's part of my past, you know. It's what we did, but it's not times we spent together, and we would sit around, listen to music, you know. Not always high on dextromethorphan, but just enjoying good times together, being friends, going out on the town together, and stuff like that, and just we listened to Tool records. Um, um, Lean is a different thing. That is the codeine cough syrup. I think it's codeine. That's like the prescription cough syrup. Dextromethorphan you can get without a prescription. It's kind of funny how the world works sometimes. Lean will kill you, of course. It's straight up. That's just a term is slipping my mind, but it is a narcotic. Promethazine with codeine and grape soda. That's what it is. Yeah. Or sometimes people drop Jolly Ranchers in it and that kind of thing. I, I know more than people think I do about some subjects. This is all secondhand knowledge, of course. Um, Although anyone who listens to hip hop, of course, will know all of that as well. But at least if they're a deep enough hip hop head, they'll know. Um, anyway, that was me and Glenn's friendship, and I mean, it matters, you know. And it was not good. It was not good, but I loved the man. And so I got out of the army. You know, Oksana was dead, and I was still. I've never really recovered from that. I mean, it's not really the kind of thing you recover from. It just becomes a part of who you are, and you move on with your life. An opiate, thank you, BC Paladin. That's the word I was looking for. Um, um, you just never recover from something like that. You know, add in the ingredient that I was expecting her to move to Maryland and we were going to get back together, and it was all happening, and it was like dreams were about to come true. And then it all fell apart and she died. But again, I know now, looking back, I would not have been happy because people don't change very easily. They don't, especially old habits, and especially when they come from a broken home situation. It's not, it's very rare that people can pull themselves out of that kind of thing. She was trying her butt off. She was, and then she died. My friend Glenn, though, again, I was good friends with him, and but there was this darkness in him, and he had no hope. And he used to say, I don't think I'm going to make it out of Korea alive. So I got out of the army. I tried moving on with my life. Our parish, Holy Apostles, was just getting founded at that time, and the very first service that the parish served as a parish was a memorial service for Oksana. But I entered into being the choir director at that time, and was all sorts of other things going on in my life. This isn't a whole life story about me. It's talking about death right now and suicide. And I would call Glenn and my other friends. I had many friends that were still stationed in Korea, and I would call them regularly, at least once a week. Um, and one day I called, and I was not able to reach Glenn, and I called another friend, a mutual friend who was there, and he said Glenn's AWOL. Man, what the heck? I can't say I was surprised to hear it, but being AWOL in Korea is not a good thing. Being AWOL in the United States, I mean, you can go home. You could go. You probably get in trouble, probably some level of criminal prosecution, or you get a dishonorable discharge, something like that, which means you'll be treated as a felon going forward, and you're getting a dishonorable discharge is kind of the equivalent to getting a felony conviction. But anyway, the point is, you can still just go home. Getting you don't. Most people in the army don't have passports. The only reason that most young soldiers, privates, young enlisted men don't have passports. They're there because they're part of the United States Army, and there's whatever agreement exists between the host country and the U.S. military or whatever. So it was like to go AWOL in another country is really bad because you have no way of you can't fly, you know, your name goes on a list, and people start looking for you. But he kept on. I'd call back, and I thought, okay, well, maybe he just had a bad weekend. He he got, something. He did have a bad weekend, super bad. But um, he he kept on being AWOL. A week passed, 2 weeks, finally 3 weeks, and I called again, and actually I got a call from our mutual friend, and he said Glenn is dead. And I was like, what? Why? How? His body was found at the bottom of a ravine. I'll never know if he did it voluntarily, but I know him well enough to think I know what happened, which is that I believe what happened is that he got so drunk and that he separate. First of all, this was uh, this was after 9/11. Did he die? No, he died. No, it was just before 9/11. The point is, even in Korea before 9/11, because this was that year, by the way, we're talking about 2001 that all this stuff happened. Um, Even before 9/11, you couldn't leave a base. If you're supposed to always have what they call a battle buddy. Okay, you're supposed to always travel in at least pairs, if not larger groups, for all sorts of excellent reasons. But once you're off post, it's not like anyone can really check up on you. And so he separated himself from his group. I think he got ripped drunk and probably downed a couple bottles of Robitussin. And he got himself into a place mentally where he would not care if he killed himself. And I think that's what happened. I think he probably, wandered around. He was found at the bottom of a ravine on a mountain right behind Camp Sears, which is where I was stationed at the time. I don't even think it exists anymore, but it was in near the city of Uijeongbu in Korea. And I think he got himself to a point where he wouldn't care, because I don't think he quite had the gumption to do it himself. To do it in his right mind. People make their own hell, and they can be living in it while they're talking to you in the broad light of day, while they're being loving with you, while they have a great sense of humor, while they're sharing interests with you and all this other stuff, and they can be living in hell. Not a very. This is truth, though. This is truth. You know, I I think about the deaths that these different deaths. Okay, I skipped over my grandma's death. Her death was a normal death. She was in her late 80s, and she passed away in a nursing home. Um, she had a wonderful, full life of raising a family and loving God, loving, leaving a legacy of love, a legacy of service. She never missed church. She taught Sunday school for 60 years. Even after she couldn't walk anymore, she would go in. When she was in the nursing home, she would still go to the same church that she helped to found right here in Beltsville, Maryland, just to be around the kids, even though she couldn't really hardly speak anymore. And that death left a whole different mark, than the death of a sad young man who couldn't emerge from the darkness he made for himself. It's not that he had no excuse for it. It's not that there weren't lots of good reasons for him to, good earthly reasons for him to have no hope or whatever. But he still made it for himself. Life is hard. These are hard facts of life here, life and death. Uh, you know, the question that I was asked, or the topic as presented to me from DeWalt earlier: pain, mental and physical, and why suicide is not always cowardly. Well, I don't think it's always cowardly. No, I don't. In fact, I don't think it's ever cowardly. I, I mean, I don't know. Maybe sometimes it is, like Jeffrey Epstein, who I believe did kill himself, but I don't really know. I'll never know. Like, that suicide was cowardly because he didn't want to face the consequences of his actions. That's like sort of an act of pride. Um, I don't even know if I would call that cowardly, honestly. I mean, honestly. But I just don't know. I'm not that kind of person. I mean, I don't have those kinds of thoughts. That's not, some people do. I don't. Um, Comments are really slowed down. I guess y'all are listening to my sad, sad story. Um, but, you know, it's prideful, is what it is. It's prideful. Yeah. I don't know what's in anyone's heart or their mind unless they say it out loud. It's pridefulness, not cowardice. See, I don't, to me, I imagine suicide as something you got to have guts to do. Yeah. I mean, it does. It takes a certain kind of prideful courage. And I think people understand when I say pridefulness, I'm speaking of a sin. Okay? Because you're placing yourself in the judgment seat. And here we get into the Orthodox part of things again. Again, I'm speaking from an Orthodox standpoint. The Orthodox theology is, why are we alive in the first place? Well, we look around us, we see the facts of our mortal life, and we know it's not perfect. Okay, yet we have an image, a, everyone has some kind of an image of what they think perfection would look like. And the only thing we can agree on is that we're not there. Well, that's the dream of the garden. That's the knowledge that we were made for something better. We yearn for it. We can feel it. We can almost taste it and touch it, but it's not there. Well, that's because we were made for it. Yes, we were made for the garden. We were made for immortality. We were made for perfect union with God for eternity. And I mentioned before, heaven is not going to be a place where we sit around playing harps. It's going to be a place where we re-engage with dynamically making the kingdom, subduing chaos, being fellow workers with God in the vineyard. So that's what life is for. Now we have a mortal, fallen human life now. It's not the life of paradise. It's not the immortal life. It's mortal, it's fallen. And when I say fallen, I mean that it is a life that is the result of sinfulness. It's the result of the world that we live in is the world that the human race has made for themselves. We've made it for ourselves. It was quite hellish. And since the coming of Christ, the return of this is God rescuing the whole human race. That's what salvation is. He has saved us, and He is saving us, and He will continue to save us. And in the end, we will be saved, unless we reject it, because again, He won't abrogate our freedom. So that's what mortal life is for. It's for the salvation of your soul. And that includes every part of your mortal life. If you're a Christian, when pain comes, when physical pain comes and mental anguish, which will come, to pridefully slay yourself. People do it as an escape from pain or as this, that. It may not be cowardly, but it is prideful, and it's a huge mistake. I understand it. I do understand the kind of pain that can exist inside the mind and heart. I do. But enduring it is salvific. It cleanses us. It cleanses us. Yeah, I mean, that was probably the case with my friend, with Glenn. And it's very sad. It's very sad because, I mean, it is ultimately prideful, though. And you'll notice, for anybody who's come across someone like this, whether or not they've committed suicide or whether they've just are the kind that can't stop talking about it or thinking that way, they won't hear a word you say. Okay, you can talk to them all day long and tell them the truth. It's not just platitudes. You're telling them the truth. I love you, man. You're incredibly talented. You're funny. People like being around you. It doesn't land. It has no impact. They've made their own hell and they're living in it. It is very sad, and they think that their life has no value. Kids, please stop fighting. Okay, so yeah. Well, I don't know if they forget. I just think they don't care, right? And this is the pridefulness part too. A lot of these are theological and philosophical problems at their core. Because, if you think but I don't know. I can't read their heart and their mind, but I suspect it's theological and philosophical at its root. Because it's not. I don't think it's that they forget. I think it's that they don't care. They don't think that those other people have enough value, that their opinions just don't matter at all. They don't care about the opinions of others because they have, even though they're full of despair, and even though they think everything is terrible, they still can't. They can't. What they really can't abandon is the concept of themselves in the judgment seat, even if it's just themselves that they're judging. Yes, if you are ultimately humbled before God and have realized your life is not yours but God's, it is impossible. Pride is the opposite of that. Yes, it is the opposite of that. I mean, it's ours because He gave it to us. But He also decreed death, but also for us. And this is the orthodox part. It's not just a punishment for sin. It's a blessing. And every pain that you go through in this life is a blessing because it is salvific, because it helps you rub off those rough edges of your soul. Uh, if we, C.S. Lewis talks about that a little bit, and that's something that some of you may have read, but it's also, it is in accordance with Orthodox theology. If we did not die, think of a world. Anyone who's watched a show like, for example, Altered Carbon or something. Imagine a world full of immortal wickedness. It's only our knowledge of death. It's only our mindfulness of our own mortality that brings about repentance in the first place. If we didn't know we were going to die, if in fact the opposite was true, if we knew we weren't going to die, well, what would be the point? What would be our motivation for actually changing our ways? And why should we assume that that wickedness would gradually go away? It won't. It will only increase. It will only increase. Um, yes, that's my dear sweet love right there. Say hi to my wife, everybody. Um, I wonder if she's tried to text me or anything. No? Okay. Yes. And by the show, I assume you mean life. Yeah. Honesty is always the best policy. I mean, I don't facilitate any bereavement groups. I've just spoken to oh, the whole point of the show. Oh, she's talking about, okay, yeah. Yeah, it is. It's a cautionary tale, as as are many of the greatest, really all science fiction is at its core a cautionary tale, going back to Frankenstein. Yes, Daniel can have a turn on the computer. Um, oh, I didn't mute that, did I? Yeah. Um, so, yeah, that's the point of all the great science fiction stories, is that they are cautionary tales, and many of them actually have to do with that very theme. It seems to me, having glanced at Altered Carbon, like this every once in a while, as Dorothy's watching it. It seems to me sort of a combination of Blade Runner and the works of William Gibson, and explores a lot of the same themes. But I haven't gotten into it much myself because I'm like playing over here on my computer. Um, yes. So the point of the the whole reason our mortal life exists, and by our mortal life, I mean the life that ends with our death, is because of our salvation. It's a gift to us to facilitate our salvation and to rescue us from the demons, and to rescue us not only from the demons, but from becoming demons ourselves, from becoming eternally wicked. But when we have that opportunity now, we have that knowledge, we feel our, you know, I'm only 42, but I can already kind of feel the wheels start to come off, you know? You start to feel your body breaking down. You start to see the ravages of time. You have these experiences with people. Um, to get back to DJ, yeah, it's so hard to talk to people about these things. But again, God can make good out of evil. If I hadn't had the experiences that I'd had in my life, I don't think that I'd be able to do the job that I do now. I can look at people honestly and I can tell them in no uncertain terms and with directness, looking them in the eye, you do have value. You do. Okay. Sometimes people need a smack in the face to tell them that. Uh, no nonsense. No nonsense. Sometimes certain situations require gentleness, but sometimes gentleness can be greatly overrated. Gentleness is not the same thing as love. Um, oh, probably not the same person. That would be kind of funny, though, wouldn't it? Yeah, I know. That's what I'm the youngin when I'm talking to Saul and others. I'm the youngin in the group. But yes, see, I keep doing stuff like that. It's because I sit too long in one position, and then like my shoulder starts bothering me, and yeah. Welcome, Joanne. Welcome, Joanne. Thanks for joining us. I've been going for a little over an hour, so I might be ending soon. But I hope you'll be able to get some value out of the rest of the. I know, drop. You revel in it. You revel in it. But I think maybe you've discerned by now that I have a little bit of the got a little bit of the forum warrior in me. You like to bring it out. Um, yeah, speaking of old habits dying hard, there's so much that goes unsaid in my mind when interacting in certain ways and with certain people. Let's just say. Um, but yeah, no, I DJ, and talking to people about this. Sometimes talking to them. I remember when Oksana died, and one of the things that marked Glenn as the best friend that he was. Everyone else didn't know what they didn't. They were just kind of like tiptoeing around me. They knew what had happened because I got a call in the morning um, from my mom. First thing in the morning. I mean, I'm talking first thing in the morning when you're in the army is 5 o'clock before sunrise, right? You're getting up and you're getting stuff together to go down to formation for PT. And that's when my mom called to tell me that Oksana was dead. And all I could say to her was, I gotta go. Because I was literally like pulling on my shirt to go downstairs, to barely make it in time to formation. And as soon as I got down the stairs, like I felt my knees, my legs going weak as I started walking down the stairs. It was like I got to the bottom of the stairs and I just collapsed on the curb and started sobbing. So they brought me over to talk to the chaplain, and he was a good friend of mine, still a good friend of mine to this day, Father Jim McNeely. I love that man, great friend. But anyway, nobody really they all just were kind of tiptoeing around me because it's a small post. It was a small group of people, just one company worth of people, one battery in artillery terms. And so everyone knew that there was something up. And then, a couple of folks who were in the know let it be known around, his first love just died. But Glenn, he just came right up to me when I was on a smoke break. in the motor pool, because they offered me. They were like, "Do you want to go? Do you want to take the day off? Do you want to do what do you want to do?" I said, I just want to go to work. I couldn't imagine doing anything else because I didn't want to be alone. I didn't want to have any other thing disrupted. I just wanted to go to work. So I just went to the motor pool, and just was there doing my regular day job. And Glenn walked up to me during a smoke break, and he just looked me in the eyes, and he just quite simply said, "I don't know what to do or say." It's the most honest thing he could say. So he said it, and he didn't know what else to say. But sometimes you learn better things to say. But no matter what you say to people, if they're suffering, it should be direct. It should be truthful. If you're going to say anything at all, sometimes they don't need anything. They just need to be listened to. They just want you to hear what they have to say. People don't always need people don't always need an answer. Nothing, not everything needs to be fixed or can be fixed. Sometimes it just needs to be heard. I don't know if we've solved anything today. Have we solved anything today? People are in pain. Pain happens for a reason. It happens for our salvation. God allows it to happen for our salvation. The problem of pain is only a problem if your theology is incomplete. And I don't want to offend anybody who doesn't believe in in Orthodox Christianity. But when I say incomplete, I'm speaking from an Orthodox standpoint. To understand that we were made, absolutely. Sometimes people just have to get it out. They just have to get it all out so that it's there, and they can be exercised of it. But we were made for eternal union with God, and then we sinned, and so we die to save us from our sins, and to save us from becoming eternally wicked. And through Jesus Christ, our nature is healed, and through Him we are able to live in paradise again. But we still require, those of us who are born into this world, we still require repentance. We still require humility. Humility. And I think that's a big problem when it comes to suicide and stuff. Is that you're talking about in a lot of situations there's a real lack of humility. However, most of the time, once again, I'll reiterate, I start with the assumption that the person was not in their right mind, that something was so tragic, so dark, so messed up in their life that they couldn't see a way out of it, and they just want it to end for whatever reason, and they don't have a complete understanding, and they don't have maybe they don't have anyone to turn to. I don't know, but we have to pray. We have to pray. Um, Form a relationship with God, people. An active one. And by the way, anytime anyone has any questions of me regarding the Orthodox faith or issues, Joe, we talked a little bit about communion, for example, last time and stuff like that. I don't have a problem talking about that stuff. I'm not going to get into it on Saul's show, um, in great detail. Um, Maybe short answers or explanations or whatever during quad meet and stuff like that. But uh, I don't know. Anybody? Yes. Judgment, by the way, is always the Lord's decision. Judgment is mine, saith the Lord. Vengeance is His as well. Um, Apostolic. I'm not. I mean, I'm aware of what the word means, but um, I don't quite know what you mean by it, Joanne. Would you care to elucidate? Never use a 5-cent word when a $10 one will do. I should, shouldn't I? I really should. This is about my native inertia and laziness. I just kind of felt like doing one today, so I did one. But no, my wife has said that I should. She would like to see me do just like a 5-minute thing every day, and I think I'll start doing that. Just Father Chris talks for 5 minutes, and then we'll do that like every day, and then maybe I'll keep doing these impromptu ones on a larger topic now and again. I hope that what I said was helpful or not, at least not too boring for folks today on the topics of faith and death. Pretty huge topics, actually. But yeah, thanks, Joe. Yeah, I think it's important, actually. I think we've yes. Um, the reason I know all of you is because of Quod Verum and not because of the Orthodox Church. At first I sort of despaired, not despaired, um, but I was talking to Saul one time, and I said I think there's already enough Orthodox priests out there that are talking about stuff, and he's I don't know if we need one more, and he said no, you're wrong, we do. I think he's right. It's not that we need another voice talking about all the same stuff, but here we have a unique thing going on because all of us kind of know each other from a different context, uh, but most of you don't know much about Orthodoxy. But you do know a lot about advanced topics of other types and the kind of rhythm that we've developed so far within Quod Verum, and how we speak to each other about things. Uh, so so I can kind of hit like in the middle. There's lots of introductory information to talk about, but there's also some advanced topics to talk about, and it's kind of a nice mix. Um, excellent advice. Excellent advice. Um, Good shoes, man. You know, good shoes are pretty important in Orthodoxy. The joke is most Orthodox churches don't have pews, and even those who do, most people are not sitting throughout most of the service, and the services tend to be long. Um, uh, okay, interesting. Interesting. I do know that it is a constant sort of refrain within Protestantism in general, to want to get back to find the apostolic faith, the faith of the apostles. I assume that's why the word apostolic was used in your denomination that you were raised in. Um, yeah, um, yeah. I mean, no one's going to frown at you. No one's going to look at you sideways or anything. That's why there are seats. There may not be pews in most Orthodox churches, but all of them will still have like benches along the sides, at least, that people sit on quite frequently. Um, yeah, and in those, and some people just because of health issues can't, and that's fine as well. Um, but if you're wondering why, I mean, a lot of it, the short canned answer that I used to get as a kid when my parents converted to Orthodoxy was, well, what does Jesus say uh, right before he gives the disciples the Lord's Prayer? Can anyone, I mean, without looking it up, can anyone remember that? I'll give you a minute or two. I'll get off. I'll give it another 10 minutes. We'll try to round it at a nice hour and a half. Um, yeah. Yeah. I mean, and to be honest, most folks will be understanding even before they get to know you, especially if you're a newcomer. Most people, when there's newcomers, are willing to give them every benefit of the doubt, especially in parishes that are full of converts, which is what our parish is. Can anyone? Uh, yes. When you stand at prayer, that's what he says. When you stand at prayer. Good guess. When ye stand at prayer, this is how you pray. So, um, yeah. Um, yeah, so I've noticed that a lot of Protestantism is seeking that apostolic faith because they think that the Roman Church, added a lot of stuff over the years, and of course they did. But yeah, I mean that's the Orthodox Church is the faith of the apostles, which is not meant as a rebuke to you using the word apostolic or anything. And but I've found oftentimes when the word apostolic is appended to the name of a Protestant denomination, it's because they're explicitly seeking for that older faith, the faith of the apostles. You know, what were the apostles up to before the faith became institutionalized, as it did during after Constantine. But the truth is, it was kind of institutionalized already, and there were already liturgical forms and hierarchies and all of that good stuff. Um, and those liturgical forms have not changed very much since the time of the apostles, actually. Some things have been developed over the years. That much is true. Oh, excuse me. And I'm really answering something that nobody asked right now. So maybe I'll leave it there and see if anybody has anything additional they'd like to hear about or hear expanded upon before I get done. I'm going to try to wrap it up at 5:30. Um, um, I'm not entirely sure what you mean, Joe. If you could elaborate on that a bit. Yeah. Well, I don't disagree. Alienating demographics is one of the key tools to controlling people. Oh, it's so. I mean, it's yeah, and this is one of the reasons Saul says a collectivist is a collectivist is a collectivist. Um, the irony being that many times they're not interested in collectivization at all. Really, they're interested in marginalization and division, and then to each different group, you're very you're given collectivist, depending on what stripe he is, will wish to prop up one of those groups above the others. Usually, it's just a matter of whatever pretended ideology the collectivist is advancing, whichever group that ends up being. Um, oh, would that I had a passion for prayer. I don't pray nearly often enough, and I certainly don't do the official prayers of the church often as I should. Um, and I do, but yes, prayer is talking to God. Absolutely. What This is one of the reasons that I say, at the very, very least, and I mean the very least, thank God for the things that you have and ask Him for the things that you want. And I say want here as opposed to need, because need, you want, hopefully you want the things you need. Okay, and if you ask for things that you want and they're not things that you need, I mean, maybe I should have three categories. It's just a little bit less poetic to say the things that you want and the things that you need. Yeah, thank Him for everything you have and ask Him for everything you need. Because just by doing that, you draw closer to Him. It is a prayer. To thank God is a prayer, of course. You're asking, I mean, to thank Him and to ask Him for the things that you want requires humility. You must humble yourself to some degree before you do that, because you have to acknowledge that you're not the source of the things you have or the things that you'll get. Of course, you have something to do with it. But at least, I mean, and I call that the very least because it gets your mind right a little bit. Gets your mind right. Yes. Okay. The church was splintered in. All right. So, yeah, I wouldn't use those terminologies exactly, but I know what you're getting at, and this specifies what you're getting at. It's called the First Ecumenical Council. Yes. Um, okay. Now I understand. Right. Well, it the Nicene Council, correct? The first ecumenical council. We just celebrated that a little while ago, and we had another celebration this past Sunday of the first 6 ecumenical councils, which really kind of are the councils that specifically design the, or sorry, specifically define the doctrines of the faith. It doesn't mean they invented them. The reason that they had to be defined specifically is because there were heretics saying different things. In the first ecumenical council, the heresy that was at large, that was the big one, was Arianism, which says that Jesus Christ is a created being and not God himself. This is why St. Nicholas punched Arius in the face during the council, defending the faith, in full view of the emperor. And I've said this before, and I'm sure I'll say it again. This is why Constantine is a saint. Not just because he called the council, but because he abided by their decision. I mean, it's remarkable. It's remarkable. He didn't have to. He didn't have to make Christianity legal in the first place, and he didn't have to call the council together to unify the faith and to define it. He didn't have to abide by the decision of the bishops. He was the emperor. He had Arian sympathies, but he humbled himself before the church. He didn't have to do that. Not at all. It's one of the reasons I tend to believe, unlike Saul, I think, on this one. I believe he had that vision. I believe he saw the Cairo in a vision. Absolutely, I believe that. To me, it makes his later actions far more sensible, far more easy to understand if you start with the premise that he actually did see a vision, and that vision helped him win the battle that unified the empire. So, yes, nightly prayer. Uh, in the night and in the morning. Good idea. Good idea. Yes. All I can say is yes. Please do. Please post it. Excellent. So, folks, it's 5:29 by my clock. I think I'll start bringing things to an end. And thank you all for staying here. And I'm going to say one more prayer, which I neglected last time. Can anyone guess what it is? You have 2 seconds. It is truly meet to bless thee, the Theotokos, ever blessed and most blameless and mother of our God, more honorable than the cherubim and beyond compare more glorious than the seraphim, who without corruption gave us birth to God the Word, the very Theotokos, thee do we magnify. Amen. Thank you all for joining me, and I'll talk to you all again soon.